This is a video for the inlay technique that's within my Farah shawl. The shawl is worked as a flat piece of knitting, and you have a background yarn, which is knitting throughout, and then you have different contrast color yarns, which are just inlaid into the fabric. So the contrast color yarns are never making any stitches. They're just passing to the front and the back of the fabric and creating these floats, which then build up all these different patterns. Each little section of the motif within an individual color is worked with a separate strand of the contrast color. So if we have a look at the back side, you can see that they're not floating over to different motifs. They're just keeping within their little boundary of that shape. I like to use lengths of yarn for the contrast colors that I've cut into just manageable sizes. So this might be 1 meter or 2 meters, or however long you like. And I just let them hang from the fabric. And then I just kind of work with them as I need. So you can try different ways of managing your yarn, like using bobbins or butterflies. But I actually find that just having these loose strands works really nicely, and it doesn't get knotted up or anything like that. So we'll put this to one side, and I have a small piece of knitting that I've cast on. So we're working flat, back and forth, and all the motifs are just added in through the stockingette sections of the shawl. This is an example of how the patterns are charted up. So you can see that where you've got the motifs, then these are representing the floats that are showing on the right side of the fabric. And you'll notice that for each little kind of section, the same thing happens on both the right side and the wrong side. So the wrong side will always be a repeat of the previous right side. So that makes it a little bit easier. It also means you don't necessarily have to look at the chart when you're working the wrong side. I've got my knitting cast on, and we'll just work a little example here to show you how to introduce the yarn and then how to work a right side and a wrong side row. So I'm just going to knit a couple of edge stitches, and then I've got my contrast color yarn, which is a cut piece, which I've folded double. And the first step is to introduce this into the fabric. So always leave a tail that you can weave in later. We let that tail hang at the back of the fabric, and then we're letting the strand sit, the rest of the strand sitting at the right side of the fabric. So this would be an area where we would have, for example, a stitch or a couple of stitches charted on our pattern chart. So let's say we need to do 2 stitches. Then we knit 2 stitches with the main color. And then I'm going to take the contrast color yarn and I'm going to bring it in between my needles to the back. Make sure that your right stitches are evenly spread. And then let's knit 2 stitches in between. And then we'll repeat that where we'll do 2 stitches again in the contrast color to create that float. So we'll just bring that strand of yarn in between the needles to the front. We'll knit those 2 stitches, and then we'll bring the contrast color to the back again. And then we'll just knit to the end so that we're back onto the wrong side, and then we'll have a look at how that wrong side works. The whole of the pattern is charted, and you can piece together the charts to make kind of a life-size printed out version of the shawl. Okay, so now we're on the wrong side. And as I said, with the wrong side, we're just repeating the same pattern that we did on that right side. So I'm going to just purl to where I can see that strand hanging down. Okay, and then I'm going to pick that contrast color strand up. We're going to go in between the needles so that it's back on the right side. And then I'm purling those 2 stitches. And then I'm taking that contrast color strand, coming back to the wrong side. So now we've got 2 stitches where we don't want the float to be showing. And then we've got those 2 stitches again on that right side. So we're bringing the float again in between the needles to the right side. And then we'll purl those 2 stitches. And then we'll bring it to the wrong side for the final time. So you can just kind of check your right side to see where you're going. And then, as we can see now, we've got those two row repeats there for that first fiddle motif. So all of the charts represent all of these motifs throughout. They're all worked in the same way. You can add in more yarn when you run out. So if you run out of a strand, just add another strand in. You can trim it once you've finished with it. So you'll end up with kind of different strands hanging off the back of it. But I found that was sort of the simplest, cleanest way. You can weave in your ends just carefully going into the motif or into some of the stitches. Just check it's not being shown through to the right side. And that's it.